Hello, my friends and fellow miracle workers. It's Wednesday, and that means it's time for some wisdom from A Course in Miracles. I have another story to share with you this week when I want to talk to you about bringing illusions to truth, one of the main teachings of ACIM. So on Monday, Carly, my partner Carly Hardy, did a fabulous video about how layers of illusion cover up the truth of what the world is really like, what's really going on here, and who you really are. And if you missed that, I encourage you to go back and listen to her video where she describes the overlay of illusion on truth. But that begs the question then, once you've listened to that video, about how to peel back those layers, how to remove those layers of illusion so that we can revel in the truth, so that we can experience the truth of reality, which is love, peace, and joy. And that's what we all want, right? That's where we all want to be. But in order to do that, we have to be willing to do what is asked of us. We have to be willing. So, what most of us want, if we're honest with ourselves, is we want to bring truth to the illusion. And by that, I mean we want God to just swoop in here, or an angel, or Jesus, or whoever, and solve our problems for us. We want to pray and say, please make it all better, and then we want a miracle to happen, right? But that is truth coming into this illusory world of problems. When we're unhappy, when we're upset, when we're angry, we're stuck in the illusion of thinking that life is not good. Life is good. That's the truth. If we are not feeling it, we're stuck in the illusion. And then we want to be rescued. We want the problem to be solved for us without any effort on our part. That's what traditionally we've been taught is a miracle. But that's not how the miracle process works. So what we have to do is we have to be willing to bring our illusions to the truth. The Course says to put them on the altar, and by that it means recognize what illusion we're stuck in, where we're stuck in the illusion, and then be willing to release it, hand it over, and let it go. Let the Holy Spirit take it away from us and off of us. So I have another story to share to illustrate this point with you this week, and it's a story about when I got exceedingly angry with my husband. And the reason that I got so angry with him was because he went out and spent a bunch of money on a bunch of things that I did not want to spend money on and that I did not want in our home. So I'm going to give you a little bit of background. I grew up in the suburbs. My mom was a school teacher. My dad was a salesperson. I had this very middle-class life of going to school, going to work. And my husband grew up on a farm hunting as a child with his dad and his brothers. And that was a very happy bonding experience for him. I was never around guns. And when I was about 6 years old, maybe 7 years old, I remember this quite clearly. It was one of the most traumatic things that ever happened to me in my childhood. My father got a job as a bill collector, and he had to visit some very dangerous neighborhoods sometimes. And unbeknownst to me, he had a loaded pistol in the glove box of his car. So one day, my dad took me and my sister somewhere, and he had to make a pit stop to talk to somebody, and he left the two of us sitting in the car. And he said, I just have to run in, I'll be right back. And he went into somebody's house. Well, I got bored pretty quickly. There wasn't much to do. I talked to my sister, I played for a few minutes in the car, and then I started looking around for something to entertain myself. And what did I find? A loaded gun in the glove box. I didn't know it was loaded. I just knew it was a gun. And I knew from watching television that you had to pull the trigger to fire it. So I was holding on to the butt of the gun and pointing it at my sister's head, who was about 5 years old. And my father came out of the house in that moment. He saw me pointing a loaded gun at my sister, and I got the whipping of my life. He was so panic-stricken. He ran to the car. He got the gun out of my hand. He dragged me into the garage of the people that we were visiting, pulled my pants down and spanked me in front of everybody. And I was just mortified, just mortified. I think I was more embarrassed than anything else. And I was also very upset that I thought my dad was so dumb that I didn't know that you weren't supposed to pull the trigger. And he really thought I was going to shoot my sister. But, you know, from an adult perspective, it was a whole different picture, right? And my father did apologize to me years later for that and said that he felt bad about blowing his stack. He just was in fear. He went into fear immediately. So that was my whole experience with guns before I married my husband. My husband is a gun collector, an avid hunter. He hunts for turkey and he hunts for deer every year. And he is always on the lookout for more guns. So here's the incident that happened where I lost my temper with him. First of all, he decided that he wanted a gun that he could shoot coyote with that were stealing the neighbor's chickens. And it was a semi-automatic weapon. And he was trying to figure out how to get a good deal on it. And he realized that he had an antique gun that he never used and that he could trade that gun in on the new gun and get it for a great price. So he was wheeling and dealing. He was trying to please me because he knows I don't like it when he spends money on guns. He traded the old gun in. He got the new gun for an even-steven trade, but then he spent $700 on a fancy scope to go on top of the gun because his eyesight isn't what it used to be, so that he could see long distance. From my perspective, it was like he just blew $700 on a gun. From his perspective, he got a really good deal. That was the first thing that happened. So he came home with a new gun with a scope. And it was this tactical, military-looking, scary piece of firearm from my perspective. And I did not want it in the house. The next day, we're sitting on the sofa looking out the window. And there was this huge rainbow. I mean, the brightest, most beautiful rainbow I have ever seen in my entire life, coming right down to the ground in front of our house. And I said, look out the window. There's a rainbow. And right after I said that, my husband said to me, oh, I just bought a gun safe that he found on Facebook Marketplace for $600. So I got livid. I was like, first he spent $700 on the scope, then he spent $600 on gun safe without even consulting me. And he wanted to share with me how it was some kind of a miracle from his perspective, but I didn't even want to hear about it, especially after he said, we're going to be driving to Virginia tomorrow from Pennsylvania to go pick this 600-pound gun safe up. I didn't want to drive to Virginia. I didn't want to spend money on the gun safe. I didn't want to be any part of his machinations. And I got mad and I said, no, I'm not going with you. So he went by himself. And I stewed all day long while he was gone. And I started telling myself a story that my husband doesn't consult me when he spends money, that he doesn't care about what I want to spend the money on. He only cares about himself, that he doesn't respect my opinion. I just turned it into this whole big I'm a victim thing, and I got madder and angrier. So by the time he got home, I was ready to just scream at him. But he wanted help from me to unload this massive, heavy gun safe off of his trailer onto his tractor, then to drive it to the garage and unload it. It was a big job. It was not a job for 2 people. It was a job for 4 or 5 big, strong guys. And I didn't want to help. I wasn't feeling helpful. But here's the thing. I recognized that I had really lost my peace over this. I had really allowed myself to go from my normally happy, normally affectionate, romantic, like congenial relationship that I have with my husband into this downward spiral. And I didn't want to stay there. I wanted my peace back. So I had to look at what was going on inside my mind and why I felt so angry and try to figure out how to release those feelings, because this is what bringing illusion to truth is all about. It's about seeing what we're thinking, seeing what we are believing, and releasing those thoughts and beliefs, and realizing that none of it really means anything. It only has the meaning that we give to it. That's what the Course says, right? Nothing that I see means anything. It only has the meaning that I give to it. So here's what I found out in my investigative research. This situation, this story that I just described to you, was the perfect storm of all the things that could trigger me. So if you're familiar with the work of Dr. Gabor Mate, he's a trauma specialist. He says that we always find the person to marry or hook up with romantically who knows exactly which triggers to push in us to bring us to our lowest point. It's like your subconscious has like a heat-seeking missile, like, where can I find the person who's going to push all my buttons? And we do it because we need to heal those things. Those are things in us that need healing. And so we connect up with the people that show us where we need healing. And I very clearly saw in this situation that I had 3 wounds from my childhood that all came together in this one situation. And that's why I got so angry. And as I said in my previous video, anger is always a secondary emotion. It's not a primary emotion. It's a cover for hurt. When you feel hurt and you don't want to be vulnerable or show someone else that they have any kind of power to hurt you, the response is to get angry. So I had to go beneath the anger and bring that illusion to truth, that I wasn't really angry, that I was really hurt. And then I had to look at that and say, what is the story that I told myself that got me so upset? And it was this. Number 1, I had that traumatic experience with the gun when I was a child. So now anything to do with guns make me feel fearful and scared. Number 2, I grew up in a family with a lot of scarcity thinking around money. There were a lot of messages about, we can't afford that, it's too expensive, there's more month than money at the end of the week or the end of the month, these kinds of things. Money doesn't grow on trees. I heard these messages constantly, and I believed them for a long, long time. So when my husband went and spent money on things that I didn't want to spend money on, it brought that up again, that scarcity. Oh my goodness, there's not going to be enough for me because he's spending. And then the third thing was that I wasn't being considered and I wasn't being listened to. And that's never the case with my husband. He's very considerate. He's a wonderful listener. But that was the case in my childhood, where the adults ruled and children were to be seen and not heard. And it's apparently still a sore spot for me. So when those 3 things all came together in one incident, the fear of guns, the worry about the finances, and the feeling of not being acknowledged, it created this like explosion of hurt and anger. And when I saw that, what was going on inside of my head, and I realized that I was projecting my story onto my husband, then I could turn it over and release it. And this is how we bring the illusion to the truth, because no story is true. That's why they're called stories. They're not the truth. It feels like the truth. It felt like the truth to me, but it wasn't the higher objective truth. It was a subjective truth. So anytime you're upset, anytime you're angry, anytime you're hurt, it's a sign. It's a sign from the universe to take a look. Why do I feel this way? What do I believe? What am I telling myself? What have I not questioned? And what can I release? And what can I let go of? Now, I want to go back and tell you the story from my husband's perspective. Number 1, he got a free gun and a very expensive scope. So he ended up with a gun and a scope for only $700 that would have cost probably $2,500 or $3,000 if he had paid cash. From his perspective, it was an amazing deal. Number two, we saw that rainbow. And then immediately afterwards on Facebook Marketplace, he found that safe for $600. That safe is the top of the line gun safe champion, and it costs between $2,000 and $5,000, and he got it for $600. So from his perspective, it was a miracle. From his perspective, he got 3 things that he really wanted for $1,000 that would have cost probably $8,000 if he had just gone and purchased them without, shopping around or without being aligned with the divine and allowing the best opportunity to come to him. So our truth is only our truth. It's not the truth. Everybody's right from their perspective, depending on their viewpoint and their past and their stories. And we always have the choice to be right or to be happy. And it's far more important to me to be happily married and to get along. And it's not about one person being right and one person being wrong. It's about, do I want to be at peace and do I want to be happy or not? That's all. That's all. Do I want to be happy or not? I have a choice. Happiness is a decision that I must make. And I made the decision to be happy instead of angry. But I had to first look at what I believed, what I was feeling, why I was feeling that way, and then being willing to not feel that way and let those things go. And I want to encourage you. I'm not just telling you stories to talk about myself. I want to encourage you to realize that every time something like this happens and you let it go, it's gone. It doesn't come back. I won't get triggered by this again because I've seen it. I've seen through it. I've seen through the veil of what was happening here and what I believed and what I thought and how it wasn't true, how it was part of the illusion. So that's how we heal. That's how the healing happens. You have to allow yourself to feel the feelings. You can't pretend that you're not upset and make it go away. That's like sweeping the dirt under the carpet. It's still there. And feelings that are buried alive never die. They just fester. And a lot of times we have these feelings when we're children that we're not allowed to express. When I was growing up, it was very important to be a good girl. And good girls didn't get angry. They didn't throw tantrums. They didn't shout and scream and stomp their feet when they were upset about things. They just stifled that and smiled and acted nice. And then what happens 40, 50 years later, it's got to come out. It's got to come out sooner or later. So once it comes out and once you allow yourself to feel it and to be honest with yourself about what's really going on. I wasn't really angry with my husband. I was really angry that these things inside me had never been resolved. And to see that, then you're done. You're done. You don't have to keep doing it anymore. We move on to other things. So I'm Teresa McGallagher. That's my message for you this week. I hope you have a blessed week. Thanks for joining me, and I love you. Take care.